Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Joining us now, the executive editor of the American Prospect and host of the Prospect Week in Review podcast.
Host of the Weekly Roundup, co-host of Organized Money.
That's right. I'm very busy.
And this week we have Senator Elizabeth Warren on the show.
Whoa. All right. David Dayen, welcome to the show. Coming in and bigfooting us a little bit.
Coming in big, coming in hot.
Well, all right. That's apropos because Elizabeth Warren, obviously known for her work in the antitrust realm of the party. Many of the trust busters that we had during the Biden administration sort of came from the Warren wing of the party. Yes. And this week we had two sort of major like developments or non-developments, I guess one could say, in the attempt to diminish corporate power realm that I want to talk to you about. And then also we can talk a little bit about the Democratic strategy on the government shutdown. But let's start with this. I am quite sure that sometime last year we spoke. We've spoken to probably your co-host too, Matt Stoller, and to others about the Google, the cases against Google that were taking place last year. And in one of those cases, Google was found to have been engaging in anti-competitive practices. They had violated antitrust laws. They were found guilty of being a monopoly by
liable. You have to say liable. Lawyers will get you because it was a civil case, not a case where one has guilt.
Liable for being a monopoly, although that's ironic based upon what has happened subsequently, because their liability seemed to have been not terribly deep. But this was a DC district court. The judge was Judge Amit Mehta, no relationship.
No relationship to the company? No.
To the company Meta.
No,
right.
He's not. No.
And so the judge found Google liable for being a monopoly. And this was the remedy sort of phase of the trial where they determined what we're going to do to fix that. You're liable for being a monopoly, so now it's time to pay the piper, as it were.
You can think about it like a criminal being found guilty of a crime, and then there's a sentencing phase to figure out what we're going to do to punish the criminality. So it's
but I would also say it's almost like phases. It's also the quality of restorative justice. What can the defendant do to fix in
this case, because you're talking about a business, yes, that you are sentencing the business effectively to do something to make sure that there are actual stipulations on what the remedy is supposed to do. It's supposed to end the illegal monopoly. It's supposed to disgorge the company of the fruits of that illegal monopolization, and it's supposed to make sure that this doesn't happen again with this particular company. That's what a remedy phase of a monopolization trial is supposed to do, and there's binding Supreme Court precedent on district courts to effectuate that.
And in the conversations I had as we prefaced the remedy with you and others, there was some question as to how effective the remedies will be. Will they go? This ruling that came out, it's almost as if efficacy was not the issue. The issue is whether you're going to do anything at all. It was bizarre. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I would characterize it. But
it's a horrible, cowardly ruling. And I should say to start that Google has been found liable of being a monopoly in 3 separate cases. This is only one of those three. This case involves Google search, which we all know, literally Google is a verb meaning to search for something at this point on the internet. And this was the nut of this trial was that Google was maintaining its monopoly by paying browsers or devices, companies like Apple or maybe Mozilla for the Firefox browser, for default status for their search engine on a browser on a phone, and paying huge sums of money, $26 billion paid to Apple in 2021 for maintaining this default status, which obviously, if they're paying that much, it was probably worth it to Google, right? Because that default status, which people normally just sort of go along with, means that they were maintaining their dominance in the search market. 90% of all search goes through Google.
If you're on your iPhone and you put in a search term in the URL bar, it goes to Google.
Goes to Google. That's right. And Google pays for that. Google pays a lot of money so that happens. And so the judge last year said that is monopolistic conduct. Now, you would think if that's the case, the least that the judge would do would be to say, Google, you can't pay another company to be the default status in a browser. That is not the case. Judge Mehta said Google is allowed to continue paying for placement in these browsers, in these devices. And he said that, but the deals don't have to be exclusive. They can't be exclusive deals. So in other words, Apple could get payment maybe from another company other than Google, and use that to determine whether or not they're going to use what they're going to put into the default. However, in this very ruling, Judge Mehta says, well, and I could get you the exact quote, but what he says effectively is Google has so much money that if they pay a lot of money to a browser or a device company, because that device company is going to want to continue to renew their business, they're going to put Google in the default. And that means we're not going to have a lot of competition in this industry. That's literally in the ruling where he says you're allowed to still do that.
Which is basically a monopsony, right? They've got a monopoly as a buyer because they have so much money that nobody can afford to lose them as the buyer on some level.
Right. And the reason they have all this money is because of the extreme amount of revenue they've been able to derive from having this illegal monopoly. And as we know, in search, the more data you have, the more queries you get, the better the search engine becomes, because it gets more queries, it can refine that information. So literally, that's the mother's milk, having that data. And so maintaining the monopoly through this default search is literally what creates the money that allows it to then pay back, give a tip essentially to the browsers and the device companies and maintain this dominance.
How does the judge justify any of this? It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand how you find them not criminally, civilly liable for being a monopoly, and then ignore the three requirements of you, and not just do insufficient stuff. It seems it basically just you say well,
I mean, we should say what Meta did sentence them to do. So it says the deals can't be exclusive, they can't be tied together, and then he did say that Google needs to give up some of its search data to other companies so that they can improve their products, thereby, hopefully improving competition. Now, this could help on the margins, but in reality, if you're still going to have those default settings, you're probably in good shape of maintaining that monopoly.
Right.
So that's what he did. And as far as why he said, oh, you can keep paying as Google, you can keep paying Apple, you can keep paying Mozilla, he basically said that if we take away this money from these browsers and device companies, they might not be able to deliver good products anymore. So he's basically saying, poor Apple, one of the richest companies in the world, poor Apple, if they don't get this $26 billion, your iPhone might not be as good, which is crazy on a number of levels. First of all, really, we're worried about Apple's bottom line here. Second of all, this was a lawsuit about Google and the search market. And Judge Mehta is basing his remedy on what it would affect, how it would affect the phone market, which he didn't study, which is not part of the case whatsoever. So that was a really shocking and I would say illegal part of this ruling. The other big thing that Judge Mehta said is that, well, fortunately, there's competition now in the search market because of AI. He basically said that, look, AI companies are getting a lot of venture capital money. They're going to create competitors to Google, things you can search on, and so we're all good here. We don't have to really go very far into punishing Google because of that. Now, the reality is that if you train an AI model, it only knows what it knows up to the end of that training. The only way for an AI model to have continuing knowledge about the world is to hook it up with a search engine. And the only search engine out there is Google.
Hits is Google, right? Well,
so yeah.
Is there, I mean, I guess it would be the government if is there a way to appeal? I mean, I can understand like maybe Google can appeal.
Both sides can appeal.
Okay.
And both sides, at least at some level, are likely to appeal. So this is a really interesting case where you're going to have a cross appeal, because here's the reason why Google will appeal. Even though they got everything they wanted out of this remedy, there's still this verdict that says they're a monopoly in search. And private litigants can use that as a precedent to sue Google over various levels of conduct. And they're doing that. There are private cases against Google in that realm. So they want to appeal to strike down the ruling itself, the liability phase of the ruling. Why the government might appeal is because this is a crappy remedy. Right. Now, is the Trump administration going to appeal this? I don't think so, because look, what did we see last Thursday? Trump with every big tech CEO having dinner and them being completely obsequious and fawning all over him. He's been big tech's errand boy all over the world, threatening other countries to impose tariffs if they put taxes or regulations on big tech. I don't think he's too interested in pursuing this any further. However, there were partners to the Justice Department in this case, and those were at the state level. So there are several states that would have the ability to appeal this remedy, including the state of Colorado, which was the lead among the states on this Google case. And the AG there, Phil Weiser, is running for governor next year against Michael Bennet, the senator from Colorado, by the way. And I think, attacking an oligarch like Google might play well in his election campaign for governor. So I do think that the states will probably appeal, and also Google will appeal, and you'll have this unique kind of cross appeal going on.
When will we know whether any of those states end up they're doing their
pretty soon? I don't have a timeline for you, but it's likely that we'll know pretty soon how they're going to attack it.
Okay, good. So we're gonna have another bite at that apple. Let's talk about
I should also say that Google was found to be a monopoly in 2 other cases. And one of them involves its advertising technology, its online advertising market. They were found to be a monopoly in that. And that remedy phase actually starts in a couple weeks. So we're going to see this again. And Judge Brinkema, who is in Virginia, who is the trial judge in that case, has been much more of a hardliner on Google than Judge Mehta, who is an Obama appointee. Like this reads like if Obama was a judge. Very, very sort of even-handed, don't make waves kind of thing. And I think Judge Brinkema is going to probably bring a stronger ruling against Google.
Interesting. All right, let's turn to the other sort of, I guess, anti-corporate measure, or at least I don't even know if you call it anti-corporate as much as it is simply just doing something to level the playing field between the coercive nature. Yes, pro-worker. Yeah. And that is during the Biden administration, Lena Khan, as chair of the Federal Trade Commission, had propagated a rule, a ban on non-compete agreements. I characterize that ban. How wide was it? How many people would have been subjected, or I should say, are subjected to non-compete that otherwise wouldn't be if that ban had remained? Or
millions of people is the answer. 1 in 5 Americans are subject to a non-compete agreement currently. 1 in 5 working Americans. And
it's not just executives.
Not just executives. We're talking about pet groomers. We're talking about janitors. We're talking about fast food workers. A whole host of industries have been subjected to non-compete agreements because they're not really about protecting business trade secrets anymore. They're really about suppressing wages. This is about saying to your worker, you can't go to another company in this field, and therefore you can't have your services bid up in the attempt to sell your labor elsewhere, and therefore you're stuck with whatever wage I give you. So that's what's going on here. And the FTC estimated when they put this rule out that it would bring $400 billion over 10 years back into the pockets of workers as a result of this. So that's a stunning number of money that's really being cheated by people because they're not allowed to bid up their wages in the marketplace.
What did the ban ever get instituted, and for how long?
No, it did not get instituted because it was finalized and set to go into effect, but there were a number of lawsuits and there were differing opinions issued in those lawsuits. So a judge in Pennsylvania said they rejected a lawsuit from a corporation and said the non-compete agreement can go forward. But a separate judge in Texas said, no, this was a illegal authority by the FTC, and we're going to block the non-compete agreement. So you had these differing agreements, and usually what happens in that case is it gets funneled up eventually to the higher courts and eventually the Supreme Court. But before that had a chance to happen, we had a changeover in power in Washington. And the new FTC under Andrew Ferguson had to make a decision as to whether to defend the cases or not. And what happened last Friday is that Ferguson, the chair of the FTC, who previously voted against finalizing the non-compete ban, so it was pretty clear what he was going to do, said, I am not going to defend this ban in court. I'm not going to defend the ruling that was in Texas that is now at the Fifth Circuit in Texas, the Fifth Circuit's in Texas and Louisiana. And I'm going to accede, basically. I'm going to surrender to the ruling of the district court, and therefore that extinguishes the non-compete ban entirely.
Does the ruling in Texas in the Fifth Circuit supersede the ruling out of Pennsylvania, which is in, I'm not sure which circuit it is, but obviously a different circuit. Like, I mean, this is
Right.
when you go to the Supreme Court very often or almost always when there are circuit court differences, because you can't have one federal law existing in, one quarter of the country and then it being different or non-existent in another quarter of the country. So what happens?
Indeed, that is not how that is what you've described is how it's supposed to work. But because the FTC said, nope, we're not prosecuting these cases anymore, and therefore we give up. The Fifth Circuit is right, or not the Fifth Circuit, but the district court judge in the Fifth, underneath the Fifth Circuit is correct. They're not prosecuting the case in Pennsylvania, and they're not prosecuting the case in Texas, and therefore it's just over. And that's essentially what they've done.
I guess what is most relevant about that, I mean, to me, is in the event that Donald Trump allows for elections, we have those elections, Donald Trump loses that election, and a Democrat wins or beats J.D. Vance or Don Jr. or whomever it is. How easy or difficult would it be for the next Federal Trade Commission chair to say, we are reviving these bans against non-compete?
Well, it's an interesting question because weirdly, in an attempt to cover this all up, the FTC is kind of reviving it already in a weird kind of fashion. The day before they decided to surrender on this nationwide ban, they issued a one-off enforcement action against the largest pet cremation services company in the country, which is a private equity roll-up, by the way, in case I needed to tell you that.
Of course.
And they said, we're stopping this company from these non-compete bans from these non-compete agreements that they're forcing their workers to sign. And in a statement, Andrew Ferguson said something like, the Trump-Vance FTC will never stop fighting for workers. And literally they stopped fighting the next day. But the other thing that they did on Thursday, the day before, basically ending the non-compete ban nationwide, is they issued what is called a request for information, a public comment period about the scope of non-compete bans across the country. Now, the scope of non-compete agreements, I should say. I keep saying bans. The ban, the rule on non-competes already went through a years long process of looking at the scope of non-compete agreements across the country. There were 26,000 public comments that the FTC received about the non-compete rule, almost all of them saying, go ahead and do this. And here's Andrew Ferguson, who, we have a bunch of nicknames for, but my personal favorite is what Burt Reynolds used to write in Celebrity Jeopardy as his name on Saturday Night Live, which was Turd Ferguson. So Andrew Ferguson says, oh, no, I just want to study non-competes. So we're going to do another public comment period, and people can tell us how bad these things are, as if they're engaged in a real process to deal with the scourge of non-compete agreements. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, if Democrats take back power and take back the FTC, they're going to have a record of about non-compete agreements and what they are and who they affect and what the harms are. And presumably they would be able to return to adjudicate this rather quickly.
Because there's going to be a record that's going to be provided for them as the Trump administration pretends that it cares about workers.
Correct.
Leading up to that. Well, I guess. Thanks for that. That's something. Right. All right, let's move on to one other topic that you've been writing about. we are 21 days, I think it is, from the potential government shutdown.
Yeah.
People remember, I think it was back in March, the government need to be funded again. And Chuck Schumer ended up leading, I think it was like 12 Democrats, but initially it was closer to like 6 or 7 or 8. They needed to provide those votes for the Republicans to pass a budget. And many people said, don't do this. Donald Trump is like a burgeoning authoritarian. Doge is running around. Elon Musk is shutting down all sorts of agencies. They are talking about rescission, pulling back money that has already been appropriated by Congress.
Right.
And Chuck Schumer's argument at the time was, well, a government shutdown is exactly what Trump wants, which he could have easily orchestrated if that's what he wanted. But let's give Chuck Schumer the benefit of the doubt that
you give Chuck Schumer the benefit of the doubt
in this very narrow place that Donald Trump was playing, 10 level chess here. And then what they'll do is they'll shut down things like Medicaid, or they'll defund agencies, or gosh knows what. He didn't say they'll make ICE the largest federal or the largest, larger than armies.
If we only had access to the future, we could have figured out that Chuck Schumer was full of crap.
Right. If there had been some document like, what we're going to do in 2025 by the Republicans.
Right.
Call it like their project.
Right. Like describing the whole project.
Yes. Then maybe Chuck Schumer could have seen that's what they were doing. But nevertheless, we're back here again. Chuck Schumer voted to fund, and it wasn't even a clean budget resolution. It also had like a clause where the Congress would not be responsible for tariffs. So it got the Republicans off the hook in the House, reversing Donald Trump's. And it also had some other funding of stuff that the Republicans wanted. But we're back here again.
Yep.
Even Schumer's biggest supporters, folks like Ezra Klein, who are sort
friend
of
of the show,
friend of yours. Even Ezra Klein is now saying, well, it was a good idea then, but it's a bad idea now, because somehow it seems like, look, Donald Trump has done all the things that Chuck Schumer said he would have done during a government shutdown, but worse, and has done so not totally undercover, but, most people don't know the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has lost 80% of their staff. Most people don't know that that all these grants have gone away, that we've destroyed Health and Human Services, that the FDA, the USDA, on and on and on. Most people don't know this because most people don't follow this stuff. So they don't realize how much of a crisis the U.S. government is in right now. They don't know about FEMA. They don't know about all these things because people live their lives. And they're got to make money and deal with their kids and whatever it is. So Chuck Schumer.
The reality, the number that comes, that I think is most prominent in this, is that at the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, Patty Murray's minority staff has estimated that the Trump administration is currently withholding $410 billion in grants that were appropriated by Congress. In other words, as one of these budget deals, they said, we're going to give $400 billion to X, Y, Z, and Q. And Trump has just illegally withheld that money. And yet we're thinking about how are we going to do another budget deal where we give this, we appropriate this money that Trump has already shown no willingness to abide by.
And in the wake of that deal, you had people, even like Nancy Pelosi, saying like, well, making a deal where you get nothing out of the deal, which is what Chuck Schumer brought home for the Democrats at that time.
Right.
Not a promise not to do rescission, nothing, zero, less than zero.
Right.
He's now a little bit embarrassed about it. And so they're coming up of what the get can be. And
Right.
they have come to the get to something that it seems to me Republicans desperately want to give, but
Right.
want to be forced into giving because Republicans are looking at one of the first, it seems to me, almost universal accountability moments where
Right.
it cannot be ignored. And that is essentially a healthcare cliff. Describe it to us.
Yeah. So in the Inflation Reduction Act, actually, initially in the American Rescue Plan, but then extended in the Inflation Reduction Act, the Democrats created new subsidies for the Affordable Care Act exchanges. So if you get your coverage in these marketplaces, before these new subsidies were added, there was a cliff in there where if you made over a certain income level, you suddenly had to pay a lot more for your health insurance. You lost all the subsidies. And so that got smoothed out, and basically across the board, the subsidies got more generous so that we had, something approaching true affordability in these marketplaces. It wasn't universal healthcare, but by and large, these exchanges were much more affordable because of this, and because the subsidies were expanded. And the last time this passed in the Inflation Reduction Act, it was for 2 fiscal years, 2024 and 2025 at that point. And so at the end of 2025, these enhanced subsidies expire and we would go back to the old system. And what that means for an individual, we've heard some stories about health insurance rates going up, and that's largely because of the Medicaid cuts and the big, beautiful bill and some of the other things. Health insurance rates are probably going up 6% or so. And for exchange coverage, they're going up something like 18%. But this is separate from that. These are the subsidies that allow you to afford that insurance. And if those subsidies are taken away, people affected by this could see, on average, more than a 75% increase in the cost of their health insurance. An incredible number, almost double the cost of their health insurance. And millions of people
overnight.
And the Congressional Budget Offices looked at this and said, okay, how many people are not going to be able to afford health insurance as a result of this? And they said 5 million people. So 5 million people are going to, according to this estimate, lose their health insurance because they will no longer be able to afford it. And those who will be able to afford it will just sort of barely hang on, right, with an increase of over 75%.
Okay. And so people should understand this is coming from two directions. One, we have the biggest increases in insurance that we've probably seen maybe in a decade.
Since the ACA.
The ACA. So 2014, a decade.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, the contraction, if not the elimination of subsidies that helped a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
In the calculation, 5 million people are going to lose it because of how expensive it is to them. Have we figured out what the rate increase is going to be in the following year with 5 million less customers?
Right. It's going to get worse and worse.
Right. It's just going to exponentially.
That's what we know about insurance. Like if you have a smaller risk pool, that means there's more of a chance that one person getting sick increases your costs. And then as an insurance company, you have to set rates that way. And there could be a death spiral in the exchanges if they just become more and more unaffordable. Okay. So we're looking at year one here in the 75% increase, but it's going to keep going up.
Let's go back to when John McCain gave his thumbs down for the repeal of the Affordable Care Act back in 2017, 2018. I can't remember exactly which year it was. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump was furious.
It was 70.
But the Republican Party was largely thankful because they had no replacement for this. Now they all wanted to vote against the ACA because that became sort of a totem for the Republican Party.
Right.
But John McCain knew he was doing this, and a lot of the Republicans knew he was saving the Republican Party from themselves.
Right.
Now, Chuck Schumer is in the position of John McCain because the Republican Party desperately wants to avoid 5 million people losing their health insurance.
And others, and a large section of the middle class paying a lot more for health insurance. So let's just say, even before this, this deal we're about to discuss, or proposed deal, was put together, Republicans were talking amongst themselves. Oh, I think we're going to have to extend those ACA subsidies, because if we don't, we're really screwed in the election. And so they were planning to do it themselves. It wasn't definite. They might not have gotten there, but there was going to be this big fight where they would either do it themselves or fail to get it done and then face the whirlwind of in next November.
But they were also between a rock and a hard place, because voting to expand or maintain Obamacare is poisonous to
their base. Absolutely. So they were in a really, really tough spot.
All those Congress people are like, I don't want to get primaried from my right. And if I do this, I'm giving weaponry to some lunatic in my district to primary me from the right.
And yet they know this is something I need, because in the general election, I'm going to get pilloried for it.
Exactly. And so what they need is cover to have this done. And Chuck Schumer is like, hi,
I've got cover.
I've got something for you.
The Baileys want me to cover it.
And to be clear, Democrats could also agree to this legislation outside of the budget. They could say, like, I think this could be a separate, it doesn't have to be part of the budget deal.
Doesn't have to be part of the budget deal. It's obviously, you can pass legislation on this anytime. There is a bill, there are 2 bills in Congress already to extend these premium tax credits. One extends it for 1 year. And this is another important part of this. One of these bills, which was put together by a bunch of frontliners, people who are worried about losing their election, bipartisan, says, let's extend it for 1 year. In other words, get it past the midterms, then we'll deal with it after that. Another bill put together by Democrats says, let's make it permanent. And, the question is, what is Schumer going to bargain for? Is he going to say, I won't give you votes for the budget unless you extend it for 1 year? Or I won't give you votes for the budget unless you make it permanent? If you make it permanent, there are a lot of reasons we can discuss why that's still a bad idea, but at least it's permanent, right? Imagine him saying, okay, if you extend it for 1 year, just to get Republicans past the midterms, then you'd be giving something Republicans need in exchange for passing a budget, which is something Republicans want. So, what is the trade here?
There is no trade. This is, again, Schumer just trying to figure out how he can capitulate without
and save face.
Yeah. And they, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries are desperate for Democrats not to understand this dynamic, it seems to me.
Right.
Because
and they still have this pathology where they see themselves as the responsible party, and they can't imagine they can't imagine a world where they shut down the government, even if Trump is violating the law, even if he is usurping the power of the budget, the power of the purse from Congress.
Do you think it's still this pathology, or do you think it's just they're in service of some other constituency? I mean, this is absurd.
I just don't think they're prepared for, let's say they go with this. I mean, I don't agree with it, but let's say they go with it and they say, okay, we're not passing a budget unless you extend the tax subsidies. And then Trump says, no. I don't think they're prepared for what to do in that instance, because they don't want, if you're in a negotiation and you're offering something as a condition, and you're not willing to walk away from the table, then what you're offering is meaningless.
And the idea that like it's just stunning to me. This is such malpractice because we now see Democrats like, they're Republicans have higher approval ratings than Democrats right now. It's just, it's shocking. It is shocking.
And you have some people saying, yeah, but Democrats still have higher ratings on healthcare. So if they can back Republicans into a corner on healthcare, this can be our ask, and this is a winnable fight. I don't know. It's 50-dimensional chess that doesn't make any sense to me. You're basically relieving Republicans of the consequences of their own actions, and not getting any kind of assurances that, oh, I'm not going to, no guardrails about not following the budget that you're about to pass with them, et cetera, et cetera.
How close is this deal into happening? I mean, I'm reading the things. I
don't think it's very close. I mean, I think that
Johnson's
it's something.
Like, oh, this is not something they desperately want. This, it seems to me,
yeah.
The Republicans desperate that like this is such a trap. It seems.
I think the leadership would be happy with it, but I still think Republicans have some problems on their right in terms of people who absolutely don't want to pass an extension of these subsidies. And they're concerned, Mike Johnson still has, the right wingers still have the ability to depose him from the speakership, right? So there's still problems there on the right. And Trump has not shown any aptitude or interest in any kind of negotiation with Democrats throughout this entire term. So, I think it's something that certainly there's a trial balloon out there. Democrats are thinking about offering this. I don't think they've formally offered it yet. But if they do, I think there's an interesting dynamic on the right as to whether they would be able, willing to accept it.
I will tell you right now.
You believe they would?
Look, everybody thought that they would capitulate, that the right would have essentially sunk every other whatever it's been, the budget resolution, the single bill, the big beautiful bill, on and on and on, and they always capitulate. Somebody's always just got to say to Trump, like, this is the safest thing for you, and boom, it will happen. Homework for people right now: if you live in a Republican's district, you call and you say no extension of the subsidies for Obamacare. I will not tolerate that. If you live in a Democratic district, you say no deal with the Republicans. We need to shut the government down unless Republicans are willing to fund the government and promise that a whole litany of things.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of things you could argue over that you could get in exchange for a budget deal, but it's just hard for me to conceive of doing a deal with Donald Trump, who has been unwilling to hold up his side of any bargain. Like, why are you negotiating with this person?
Absolutely. The guy has shown that he has total disregard for our laws.
And I should say, it's good that Ezra said that very plainly.
I'm very happy to see him here. And it would have been nice if he took a cue from Jamel Bowie and had done it 7 months ago, or I should say 11 months ago. But
whatever.
Better late than never, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we'll take that. And hopefully they listen to him in a way that Joe Biden listened to Matt Iglesias. So we will see. David Dayen, you are the guy that all of these people should be listening to. They should be reading the American Prospect on a daily basis. They should be listening to Big Money.
Organized Money. Organizedmoney.fm is where you go to
like
get
the .fm,
get
and of course
episodes.
Your week in review at the Prospect on Fridays, available on demand. David Dayen, always a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.